Rogue in phase 2 is pigeonholed into one build type, and that build type is going to be Mutilate. That's not necessarily a bad thing either, because Mutilate is like backstab on steroids after the buff, so if you enjoy Rogue, I'm sure you'll enjoy Mutilate as well. You aren't launching tactical nukes like a Balance Druid or a Shadow Priest, but you are still going to be blasting people, and you have stuns to help you win fights. I think the only downside of playing Rogue right now is whenever you're doing like an STV event or a Battleground, when there's group play, you can get easily blown up, and that is going to be the one problem that Rogue has. Let's actually talk about the PvP specs in the game that Rogue will use. There's going to be two main builds in my opinion, those being the Ambush spec and the other being the Master of Deception spec. The main spec that I'd run usually is going to be the Ambush spec. However, the Master of Deception variant is very good for when you are doing Battlegrounds, as you're going to be defending a lot of the time and you're going to want to be finding the other stealthies trying to cap the point. So let's hop right into the talents, and first we're going to show the Ambush spec. So let's actually first show the Ambush spec, which is going to be shown on screen here. First up, you're going to have 5 in Opportunity, 2 in Elusiveness, and 4 in Camouflage, 3 in Initiative, 3 in Improved Ambush, 3 in Improved Sap, Preparation, and then 2 in Dirty Deeds. Now, I know you might be thinking, why not go Heightened Senses? Well, Dirty Deeds is going to be way better for opening because it reduces your cheap shot and Garrote to 40 energy, which is really important whenever you want to open up on people. And then last, we're going to put points to get Improved Backstab, so you're going to have 3 in Gouge, 2 in Lightning Reflexes, and then 3 in Improved Backstab. Pretty straightforward. This is going to be the build that you're going to be running for any type of solo or world PvP, at least in my opinion. I know some people might be using the Master of Deception variant in world PvP, but I just prefer ambushing people because I think it's really fun. And the runes are pretty static right now. I don't think there's really much wiggle room. You're going to use Quick Draw, Mutilate, Shadow Step, Between the Eyes, and Master of Subtlety. The only thing you might want to change here is if you were to go maybe Waylay, but I don't really think that the melee attack reduction speed and the movement speed reduction is really all that important. I like the raw damage of Master of Subtlety. Another thing you might want to change, but I wouldn't recommend it, is instead of running Quick Draw, you can run Deadly Brew and maybe Envenom instead of Between the Eyes. But because your damage I feel like is already so high at the moment, I'd rather have the utility of having a ranged slow and a ranged stun to catch up to people, honestly. But we do also have Shadow Step, so if you want to try to go for a more damage build with Envenom and Deadly Brew, go for it. The next build we're going to be showing is going to be the one on screen now. Very similar to the last one, the combat tree is going to be the same. The only difference is going to be that you're going to take Master of Deception and a few points in Camouflage and no Improved Ambush. So as you can imagine, you're going to be a lot better at fighting stealthies 1v1, and if you ever run into an ambush spec Mutilate Rogue, well, you're probably going to get the sap off and win the duel just purely off the fact that you get the opener. However, the only thing that I don't like about this build is, one, I don't think it's as fun because I love ambushing people, and two, it's very good for BG. So if you're ever doing Arathi Basin or anything like that, I would definitely recommend this build in particular because you're going to be invaluable for your team as you can find other stealthies and defend points and all that good stuff. And again, you're going to have these runes that I talked about earlier: Quick Draw, Mutilate, Shadow Step, Between the Eyes, and Master of Subtlety. Very straightforward stuff. Now, these are going to be the main builds that I would use. There's some funky builds that you might want to try out, but I think it's very important just to talk about the main builds in this video. So these are going to be the two main builds that I'm going to talk about. Now, what I'm going to be talking about here is the gear that you're going to want to be looking for to do PvP at level 40. And I do keep in mind that this is going to be the absolute best gear you could possibly get. So a lot of it you're not going to see for a while, or you might not ever get. Things like the leatherworking cap, the engineering belts, the Warsong Gulch Exalted bracers, for example. You might not get these depending on your professions or if you want to PvP a lot, but you should be able to get the neck and the ring from the raid quite easily. And if you're a leather worker, you can get the gloves quite easily as well. And the it might take a little bit of work, but you can get the leatherworking helmet, but you have to do a little bit of like a quest chain to get it done. And for the weapons too, I quickly want to preface that You might not get Gut Ripper, obviously, because it's going to be extremely expensive. So you could use the Toxic Revenger in the main hand, which is very similar to Gut Ripper. And then in the offhand, you can use the PvP offhand or the PvP one-hand dagger in your offhand. But outside of that, let's actually talk about each piece of gear one by one. You got the leatherworking helmet. As you can see, it gives you a hit, weapon damage, which is actually incredible for PvP. And it also gives you an on-hit effect, which you probably don't want to use because it does 400 to 800 damage roughly to you for 20% increased attack speed, which really isn't going to be good for you in PvP. So, but even without that, the agility, stamina, weapon damage, and the hit is so overloaded that this helmet is god tier. Then you got the neck, which is basically a level 60 item at this point that you get from No More Gone. The Mantle of Cunning Negotiator, pretty self-explanatory, has a lot of stamina and a lot of agility. Drape of Dismantling, another really good item as well, has a lot of great stats on it, and then you want to get the +3 agility enchantment for it. Insulated Chest Guard, again, very, very good. The stats speak for themselves, and you want to get the +2 to all stats for that piece of gear. Then you have the Warsun Gulch Exalted Bracers, which you're going to want to put +5 stamina on, or if you want to use them for PvE, then you can put +5 strength on them. Then you have the Void Touched Leather Gloves, which you can get pretty easily from leatherworking. Very good item. The weapons I already talked about. The best are going to be Double Gut Ripper or Gut Ripper and Toxic Revenger. And on those, you're going to want to put +3 to melee damage on that. The weapon, you're going to want the High-Tech Super Gun Mark 7, which is going to have a lot of attack power and stamina. And as you can see a trend here, every piece of gear is going to have stamina on it because you're going to need a lot of stamina to not die in PvP. The Hyperconductive Gold Wrap, which is a engineering item, has stamina on it and really good stats on them with hit and crit, and the potential to get 3% more crit whenever you activate the item, or movement speed. Whenever you flip the coin in PvP, you're going to get something really nice out of this item, either 10% movement speed or 3% crit. So all around, it's a very good item. If you don't go engineering, then you can afford pretty much any leather belt like of the monkey that has stamina and agility on it. That is perfectly fine as well. Next up, we're going to have the insulated leggards, which are from No More Gone. Very good item as well. And lastly, the insulated work boots to finish off the tier set. And like everything else, it has a lot of stamina and a lot of agility and strength. Really good item. And on that, you're going to want to put minor speed. For the rings, you're going to want the Epic Ring from the final boss of No More Gone, very good item, and the Protector's Band if you have the Warsun Gulch rep. And lastly, we're going to talk about the trinkets. Obviously, you're going to want the Insignia of the Alliance, a very good item, and the Euromatic Experiment 420B, which is basically the BFD trinket, but with frost resistance and an active which increases your attack speed. And I'm not quite sure, but I think you can get the active, which is the attack speed bonus. You can improve that through the raid or some way, but I'm not sure yet. But anyways, guys, that is going to be the items that you're going to want for phase 2 for PvP. And as you can see, completely unbuffed with this item set, you're going to have close to 2400 HP. Now, if you get like a stamina buff from a priest, that is going to be even more. So this is going to be the absolute best gear set you can have for PvP. And now that we're on the topic of PvP, obviously, I want to talk about some tips for engaging in PvP with the quote-unquote new abilities we have in this phase, which are going to be our Cheap Shot, Kidney Shot, and Blinds. The main idea is to open up with a Cheap Shot right as your energy is about to tick, and to track your energy ticks, you can use Nug Energy, which is what I use, or Weak Aura. Having an energy tick basically means that you can open up on somebody with 80 energy, and then you can mutilate twice after your initial Cheap Shot. So you could Cheap Shot, mutilate into a Kidney Shot, which is a very good. You're going to have a 5-point kidney, and you're going to be bursting people really, really quickly. And you're most likely going to force somebody to trinket the Kidney Shot, and then you could quickly blind them after the kidney. and after the opener and you have no stuns available. In general, you're just going to want to mutilate spam until you can get 5 combo points for an eviscerate or kidney shot or even a rupture. Now, I wouldn't recommend using rupture all too often because it won't allow you to blind or sap people, but it is very useful whenever you're trying to keep damage up to either finish the target running away from you, or you want to keep another rogue or druid from re-stealthing. You can apply a rupture just to keep them in combat. Outside of that, you can open up with an ambush on Clothies for insane opening burst damage. However, there is going to be a lot of healing in this phase with all the new runes and abilities, so be careful when you want to use ambush for the opener. Nothing is really worse than opening on a priest or a druid and they get a CC off on you and then they full heal, or their passive healing full heals them and you don't kill them. That's why in 1v1s you generally want to open with a cheap shot and save your ambushes for whenever you're in group play. With the exception, if you're 1v1ing a mage, then you can cold open with an ambush. And now these aren't going to obviously be all the things you can do with Rogue. There's a lot more advanced tech that I'm not going to include in this video, but this is going to be the general idea of how to play Rogue in PvP for the majority of fights you're going to be in. And lastly, I want to talk about my general thoughts on Rogue and PvP. And I think Rogue is kind of in a good spot. I would probably say low A tier in terms of a tier list for what I think Rogue should be placed at. While Rogue doesn't have that insane survivability or damage or burst damage of other classes at the moment, your ability to lock down people in a fight is extremely valuable for the team or for yourself. Because of how bursty the meta is, if you can cheap shot somebody, a lot of the time in the Stranglethorn event, you're just going to outright kill them during that cheap shot because your Boomy or Shadow Priest or whoever's helping you is going to kill them for you. And if you're 1v1ing, even though your burst isn't as good as something like a Boomy or Shadow Priest, you're still going to be able to kill people in a stun combo because your mutilates and your eviscerate will hit really hard, because in general the amount of HP people have at the moment is extremely low, and we're hitting like we're level 60 at the moment compared to what our HP pools are. So in general, I think Rogue is not going to be the absolute best, but if you're a Rogue fanatic, you're going to really enjoy PvP at the moment, and especially World PvP where you can pick your fights. I think Rogue is extremely good. And even in things like group play where you might want to do a BG, I still think Rogue is really good just because they're great defenders, and like I said before, they can lock people down for their team to blow up for them.